Welcome to Murderabilia Exposed. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Taylor.
Today we wanted to take a little bit of time and go over some, excess merchandise that we have laying around and talking a little bit about it. We always have just a excess amount of things that we're waiting to list or trade or just that we could just never get to. And we figured we'd pull out some stuff today and talk a little bit about what we have just laying around that we're waiting to list. And I'll go ahead and start out. I just pulled out a couple things here. Like I have some like just Richard Ramirez letters. Uh Recently Herbert Mullen had passed away. I was lucky enough to do get a bunch of Mullen stuff in this trade not that long ago. And
Mm.
I recently bought out a small collection. I got like some Arthur Shawcross letters and of course some more Mullen and just random bits and pieces here. And what I did pull out as well is which I recently got is a David Turpin letter, and they've recently been in the news, him and his wife.
Mm.
They had been like torturing their kids, both adult, I guess, dependent kids, and I don't know if it was their grandkids or like just smaller children, but they would let them shower once a year, they would feed them once a day, and they were like living in their piss and shit and just a terrible, terrible case.
Hmm. It was
And
almost like neglect meets a cult almost.
yeah, it was almost kind of like the Linda Weston case in Pennsylvania where like she had kidnapped, or I guess not kidnapped, but were holding them against their will, like these developmentally disabled adults and
Mm.
stealing their money and this and that. It was, kind of similar to that. Super sad. I mean, I
Oh yeah.
can't imagine being imprisoned by my parents, let alone
Mm.
letting me shower once a year, eating once a day. That's terrible. And
Oh yeah.
like I can't imagine.
Mm.
This right here is probably one of my best pieces in my collection is a Sirhan, obviously the assassinator of Bobby Kennedy. And it's a signed print from his courtroom, like the courtroom sketch, and it's signed by him and his entire legal team. And I feel as if this is like a holy grail because this is just like I need to have this framed, and it took me forever to find.
Hmm.
And from Sirhan, and one of my more bigger pieces. I don't know if I've ever shown this to you or not, but they're handwritten pages from Issei Sagawa. I guess I'll hold them up individually because they're pretty big. They're like manuscript pages
Hmm.
where it's in his name is somewhere in there, but I have no idea what the hell it would look like because they're
Yeah.
all in different characters. But yeah, this is a Sagawa piece. And
Yeah, I haven't seen you with those, but I have seen some of those floating around before. Because I mean, he wrote a ton of books, like tons of books, right? So a lot of the raw materials from those books got sold over time, but it's hard to find original stuff from him right now.
is there a way to figure out what they're like from?
If you read Japanese, probably yeah.
Yeah,
Like
I
let
guess.
me let me show you a quick look at a chunk of some of the Issei Sagawa books I have here. I'll just pull them off the shelf right next to me. So this right here is some of his books. This is maybe
Oh wow.
almost all of them, not every single one, but he wrote so much stuff and produced so much content in his life.
How many of
So
those are signed?
two or three are signed. But I would say that when it comes, though, that's probably 2 pages from some of those books. But unless you're going to go through and compare every single book and every single page, which is a lot harder to do if you don't read Japanese, like it'd be a little difficult to figure out exactly what it is. I'll show off some things from that I have lying around here too. I have kind of what I call a death pile. It's like the things that I need to list but haven't listed, and then what I'll do is after a certain amount of time, I'll go through it every once in a while. And if something's been in there just for ages, um, I'll give it away or I'll put it as like a toss in for a large purchase. I like to throw in bonuses when I do like large sales. So this is all stuff that's kind of like in between getting listed on the site and getting put in there. This first one's kind of unique. I really don't even know what to do with this one. It's just such a weird piece. So it's an original RCMP notepad, which is like the Canadian equivalent of the police essentially. But It's a notepad from 1949 by that Bruce Northrop used when he was in the field, and he was one of the lead investigators in the Clifford Olson case. Um, who was it was known as the Beast of BC. He killed like 12 or 13 kids in British Columbia. And this somebody called me once from an antique shop and said, "Hey, I know that you like the true crime stuff. This guy has a lot of stuff relating to somebody who was working on the Clifford Olson case. Unfortunately, there wasn't any direct Olson stuff, but I've got like one of it. I sold a few of them, and I have one of his notepads left. But it's just one of those weird things where, it falls into police memorabilia as well, and it's so old. And there's somebody I'm sure that would be interested in it, but it's hard to find the specific like Clifford Olson collector who's looking for those kind of fringe items. Um, those are the kind of things that end up in here where it's like I don't really know what to do with them sometimes. Um, this here is a hand typed book, I guess a short story, 21 pages by Bill Suff. And he is a writer and he's written a few things that have been published before, but he's written a bunch of short stories that he's wanted to get published. And this is one of the original typed copies of one of those stories. But again, it's one of those things that for me, it seems like there's got to be a specific buyer. And there's other things that have a bit of significance and importance before that when it comes to listing. Let me show off one more thing here and then go back to you and I got a couple others for afterwards. But this is kind of a unique one. So when I first started writing Inmates, a big thing that I was into was collecting signed cards. Anybody who was anybody involved in sports who had any kind of crimes under their belt, or anybody who had been in any kind of true crime card set, anything like that, I would try and get signatures from. These first four are signatures I got myself. They're 3 people from the FBI most wanted list. There was an FBI trading card set where they had a lot of the most wanted names. And these are 3 of the people who were caught and went to prison. And then I ended up getting these signed by them. In the corner here is a professional wrestler who's in prison. I got that one signed. And then we get here, there's a hand-drawn card by Dennis Rader, BTK. This is an autograph from Wesley Shermantine. These are like card-size photos. Eric Houston. We have James Riva, Todd Colehep. This right here is a Magic the Gathering card that I was sent by an inmate, which is just text-based. They would type their own cards up and make them on a typewriter and then play with those cards because they couldn't get the actual cards in prison. And I think there's a couple other ones in here. Oh, yeah. So these are just kind of miscellaneous cards, but I've got a Jonestown Garbage Pail Kid card, the Sarah Aldretti signed True Crime card, which I got from you, actually. I think that I sent a bunch of these ones to you quite a while ago to get those signed. The Menendez Brothers basketball card, pretty infamous. And then these 2 are playing cards that Herbert Mullen wrote little notes on or did little drawings and designs on. I had a whole deck, but a lot of those have been sold now. But this is kind of just like, they're all like little small pieces that they're cool and there's some value to them, but it's hard to get time to do all of this. It's almost like I need a full-time employee just to like sort through and list things sometimes.
Yeah, I know that. I definitely know the feeling.
Do you have some other stuff you want to show off there too, or?
Oh yeah,
I
I have 2 more books that I pulled out, and you know how much I nerd out over Sarah Aldretti and the Narco Satanicos. So here's it's like a new spell book, which actually I ordered 2 of them, and I wanted her to sign 2 of them, but I usually will pay her to sign stuff for me, but instead of paying her, she literally just wanted this book, and I think I ended up with like 4 paintings or something like that.
Oh, that's cool.
Because she wanted a spell book, and yeah, it's pretty interesting. And this is probably like a holy grail as well. So this is a holy Bible. It's definitely older than me. It's from 1988, and it's Ken Bianchi's leather-bound Bible from 1988. This thing is just crazy. I mean, if only this could speak. Um, yeah, I know that you're familiar with Bianchi, and I've always been obsessed
Hmm.
with the Hillside Strangler case, being that I was from Washington State, and I
Yeah.
probably have like four Bibles from him as typewriter back in Washington, and so much from uh Ken Bianchi.
Hmm.
And here's a little drawing, just kind of funny. It's from a triple murderer in Tennessee. It
Hmm.
says I prefer it cocked and loaded with a few penises and handcuffs. And
That's good. That's funny.
yeah, I have a bunch of just random drawings and letters and so much that I haven't listed over the years that, kind of like
Oh
you,
yeah.
it's kind of like a death pile that if I don't sell it after a while or I trade whatever, I'll just throw it in as extras or whatever. I mean, the little
Hmm.
$5, $10 letters, it's really not worth it to post them up. I mean, after the fees and taxes and everything, you're making what, like three, four, five, six, $7
Hmm.
on those little sales.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to get like what's popular and people emailing me, every once in a while there's like a bit of an obscure case, right? And then usually I'll be able to be like, oh, cool, I'll look, I try, I have something. But most of the time, I mean, the big names, it's always, Dahmer, uh, Ramirez, Gacy, Bundy, Jonestown, Heaven's Gate, Waco, and those are like my kind of top seven. So I kind of always need to have those things in stock. And whenever those are low, Charles Manson's up there too. The big names are the ones that people always are looking for. And then when it comes to this kind of unique one-off stuff, a lot of these are my favorite pieces, but they're just kind of obscure and weird. Like for an example of like you're saying with letters, here's like just a handful of random letters, which are some pretty interesting names and cool cases, but there's just so many of them that it's like um, going through all of that and doing all that work and then having to ship every single one. Uh, like you were saying, you only make a few bucks even before you count the time you're putting in, right? And then if you're looking at your time as money, it's like, oh, it's going to take me a few hours to do this. So how much am I getting hourly on this item? It becomes difficult, which is why it's kind of nice to have these things that for trades or for throwing in as bonus stuff because if you can make a really good deal with somebody, they're going to appreciate. You're going to have their business, or they're going to keep making deals with you and bring you cooler stuff. Um, so I almost like having a bit of an inventory of stuff off of the side where I can kind of pull from and be like, oh yeah, this is a cool piece, this is interesting, or even trading cards, for instance, right? These are all different true crime cards from a bunch of different sets. And a bunch of these people are still alive and in prison. There's some people in here who you wouldn't be able to mail it to. Some people who you would have to go through another person, and they happen to have more privileges, so they can mail it in and get it signed. Or it's kind of like the more hobby aspect of things, right? When I had more time to kind of, oh, let me see if I can get these cards signed or do this, I'd be grinding on that a lot. And it was a good starting point for building momentum, for building up an inventory. But now it's just like all those kind of fun side projects and stuff. I don't really have the time to do them that often because of the big heavy hitter things.
Right. Yeah, the side projects basically just go on the back burner. That's how it is with me right now too. There's so
Mm.
much that I want to do, but there's so much that I have to do
Oh yeah,
before I want to do. So I
yeah.
gotta prioritize and pick and choose what I do and don't do.
Hmm. I think people don't realize how. I mean, maybe this gives a bit more of an example of how busy it is that you'd have all this, technically money lying around in these items that can't even go up online. But I think people don't realize how consuming this can be, right? I get messages every single day from people who just want to like chat about a thing. Like, hey, can I ask you questions of this item? Can you send me a bunch of photos of it? I'm really interested in learning about it, but I don't have money. Or people who are just like, hey, what did you think of this show? Did you ever watch this? Have you heard of this case? And it's like, as much as it would be cool to chat about this stuff all the time because it's interesting, at the same time, it's like I barely have the time to do the things I'm doing for work, let alone time to spend with my friends and loved ones to talk about this, let alone people who I don't know who want to reach out and talk. And like I get that it's like, oh, this is this person who has all this interesting stuff and they obviously know a lot about it, but the reason that I have all this stuff and I know so much about it is because all I do is work involving this stuff. It's hard to get a second away from that.
Right. I don't know about you, but I'm always getting added to like group chats and random Facebook Messenger calls and video
Mm-hmm.
calls from random people wanting to talk. And I mean, half the time they're like bots, but then the other half is just wanting to pick my brain about things or this or
Mm-hmm.
this, or I have $50 to spend. Can you send me 50 photos or can you FaceTime me and show me what you have for sale? Or,
Yeah.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's just yeah, and it's not. I mean, I think you're coming from the same position as me, where it's not trying to be rude at all, but like it's, I have lots of people who like will say like, hey, do you have any pieces that were signed by Jeffrey Dahmer? My budget is like $50. And it's like, well, no, I'm really sorry. Like those are extremely expensive. And they're like, okay, well, what do you have? Can you show me everything you have? It's not listed. It's like, well, I can't, take hundreds of photos to maybe make a sale of up to possibly $50, right? When there's people who are willing to spend, 10 grand on a painting at once and just like, hey, I'll buy this, right? That unfortunately has to take priority because at the end of the day, as much as I enjoy doing this for fun, I still need to pay rent. So I have an office to do this in, right?
Right, right. Um, before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to talk about or show or anything you got going on that you want to talk about?
Yeah, let me show a little one other thing that just kind of fell out of this box while I was going through it. So this is a little swatch of fabric that was hanging up in Armin Mivas's kill room, right? The German cannibal. He had this red fabric draped all over the room, and this was actually sent to me in a frame with something else. I guess it just happened to be part of a display. But as you can see, it's a little cut up because I've been kind of giving away swatches of this to people. People who are interested in that case and don't have a piece from it. And these kind of relics, I always like when you have a bit of a tangible item. So this is one that like I haven't been selling at all, but I'm just giving pieces away as I make sales or make deals with people or trades or whatever. But like that's kind of, I guess, to kind of present that as like for people who are just getting into collecting, I think it's always good to try and have a variety of interesting stuff, because that might not be the most valuable, but if I can add a little piece of that in a trade, it really like adds some value to that for the person, right? And when you're just kind of starting out collecting or trading or doing, I guess, lower level transactions, that kind of stuff is great to build. That's where I started. It was called Collectibles. One of the first things I ever bought was a little swatch of Heaven's Gate fabric, and it was a deal that I split with somebody else that I knew who was a collector. And then I ended up selling mine eventually for other things and kind of upgrading things as I went on. But it was like, because I had a good rapport with somebody, we could each go in on a $700 item, split it evenly, and then be able to both afford it, right? Because at the time that was like a ton of money to spend on a true crime thing for me. Yeah, and I think this kind of episode was just to sort of show like, there's so many different entry points in this hobby, and there's so many different levels and values of things. And if you're not buying like John Wayne Gacy paintings every single day, that's fine. Like get what you can afford if you want to, or write people yourself, or make connections and trades with people. Because there's like, I'm sure that if you and me have this much laying around, there's hundreds of other people that have way more stuff laying around, ready to trade to somebody or sell in a bundle for cheap. Yeah, that's about it.
Sweet. Well, I think we can get out of here, and I'm sure we'll do this again in the future, being that we always have shit coming in and going out daily.
Mm-hmm.